Listen closely, because what I am about to share with you changes everything. There is a power in your word that you have barely touched. Tonight, as the clock moves toward midnight, you stand at the threshold of the most potent moment of creation you will experience all year, and most people will waste it completely. They will speak words of doubt, words of fear, words that chain them to everything they claim they want to leave behind. But you, my dear friend, you are going to do something different. You are going to command your good to come forth. Not beg for it, not hope for it. Command it, because the words you speak before the new year begins do not simply float away into nothing. They become the architecture of your entire year. They set into motion forces you cannot see but that are more real than the ground beneath your feet. I have watched this law work without fail for decades. I have seen people transform their entire existence with one powerful statement spoken at the right moment. And tonight, I am going to teach you exactly what to say and why it works. But more importantly, I am going to show you why you must never again speak carelessly, because your word is the most creative force in your life, and you have been using it against yourself without even knowing it. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You have tried affirmations before. You have said positive things and nothing changed. You felt foolish talking to yourself, speaking into empty air, and when your circumstances stayed the same, you decided it was nonsense. Let me tell you why it did not work. You were not commanding. You were wishing. You were hoping. You were trying to convince yourself of something you did not believe. That is not the law. The law requires your word to be backed by an inner conviction, a knowing that what you speak already exists in the invisible realm and must manifest in the visible. When you truly command, there is no doubt attached to your words. You speak as one who has authority, because you understand that you are not speaking to the universe as a beggar, but as a creator made in the image of the divine. Let me paint you a picture of what happens at midnight on December 31st. All over the world, millions of people speak words. They shout, they celebrate, they make declarations. But most of these words are hollow. Happy New Year, they cry, and underneath those words are layers of anxiety about the year that just passed and fear about what comes next. They carry the weight of past failures into their celebration. They toast to hope but vibrate with doubt. And the universe, my friend, does not respond to your words alone. It responds to the feeling, the conviction, the absolute knowing behind those words. This is why two people can say the exact same affirmation and one experiences miracles while the other experiences nothing. It is not about the words themselves. It is about the consciousness from which the words emerge. You are standing right now on the edge of a new beginning, and I need you to understand something that will change how you see everything. Your past does not have to come with you. Every single limitation, every failure, every heartbreak, every disappointment, it all stays in 2025 if you leave it there through your word. But if you keep talking about it, if you keep rehearsing it, if you keep identifying with it, you drag it right across that threshold with you. I have seen people live the same year over and over again, not because circumstances forced them to, but because they kept speaking the same words, thinking the same thoughts, telling the same stories about who they are and what is possible for them. Your word is a seed. Every single thing you say plants something in the invisible soil of consciousness, and that soil is incredibly fertile. It does not judge whether your seed is good or bad. It simply grows what you plant. If you plant worry, you harvest trouble. If you plant lack, you harvest poverty. If you plant resentment, you harvest bitterness. But if you plant words of abundance, faith, divine order, and perfect outcomes, the universe has no choice but to bring those things into your experience. This is law. It is not opinion. It is not religious doctrine. It is the fundamental principle of how reality works, and once you truly grasp this, you will guard your words like they are the most precious things you possess, because they are. Tonight, before the clock strikes midnight, you are going to speak a specific word, a command that I will give you. But before I do, you must understand why this works and what makes this moment so powerful. The turning of the year is not just a human-made calendar event. It represents a collective shift in consciousness. All around the world, people are thinking about endings and beginnings. There is an energetic reset happening. Ancient wisdom traditions understood this. They knew that certain moments held more creative power than others. The moment between years is one of these. It is a crack between worlds, a space where the old has not quite finished and the new has not quite begun. And in that liminal space, your word carries extraordinary weight. I remember years ago working with a woman who came to me in absolute despair. She had lost her business, her marriage was crumbling, her health was failing. She sat in my office and said, "Everything is falling apart. I cannot do anything right. Nothing ever works for me." Do you hear those words? Each one was a command. Each one was instructing the universe to bring her more failure, more loss, more proof that she was powerless. I stopped her mid-sentence and I said, "Do you realize you are making declarations against yourself? You are cursing your own life with your own mouth." She looked at me like I was speaking another language. But I persisted. I taught her what I am teaching you now. Your words are not neutral, they are creative. Stop speaking destruction and start speaking what you desire to see. It took time, but she learned. She changed every word that came out of her mouth. 6 months later, her business had not only recovered but tripled. Her marriage transformed. Her health returned. Nothing in her outer world had changed in that moment we spoke, but everything in her inner world shifted, and the outer world had no choice but to follow. This is not magic. This is not wishful thinking. This is understanding how consciousness works. You live in a mental and spiritual universe. Everything you see around you existed first as a thought, then as a word, then as a thing. Your furniture, your home, your car, every human-made object began as an idea that someone spoke into existence. The same principle applies to the circumstances of your life. Before you had the relationship, you thought about it, spoke about it. Before you had the job, you imagined it, affirmed it. And before you experienced the problems and challenges you now face, you also spoke those into being, though you likely did not realize you were doing it. Worry is negative affirmation. Complaining is commanding more things to complain about. Gossip is scattering your creative energy on things that do not serve you. So tonight, we are going to reclaim your power. We are going to take back your word and use it with precision, with purpose, with absolute faith. But I need you to do something first. I need you to forgive yourself for every careless word you have spoken. You did not know. Most people live their entire lives without understanding this principle. They wonder why things keep going wrong, never realizing that their own mouth has been the source of their bondage. But blame serves no purpose. Guilt serves no purpose. You know now, and from this moment forward, you are responsible for every word that leaves your lips. Let me be very clear about something. This is not about pretending. This is not about denying reality or putting on a false happy face while your life burns down around you. I am not teaching you to be delusional. I am teaching you to be deliberate. There is a difference between acknowledging a situation and rehearsing it over and over. There is a difference between being honest about where you are and declaring that is where you will always be. You can look at lack without speaking lack. You can observe a problem without making it your identity. The key is this: acknowledge what is, but speak what you desire to see. Give your attention, your energy, and your creative word to the outcome you want, not to the situation you are trying to change. This is where most people stumble. They think that being realistic means constantly talking about how hard everything is, how impossible their situation seems, how many obstacles stand in their way. But that is not realism. That is fear disguised as wisdom. True realism is understanding that you live in a responsive universe that must bring you the equivalent of your dominant thoughts and words. If that is true, and it is, then the most realistic thing you can do is speak words of faith, abundance, and divine order. Because those words set causes in motion that must produce effects. Now, some of you are nervous. I can feel it. You are thinking, what if I say these words and nothing happens? What if I look foolish? What if I get my hopes up and get disappointed again? Let me speak to that fear directly. You have already been disappointed trying it the other way. You have already experienced failure using your words carelessly. What do you have to lose by trying this? But more than that, I want you to understand that the universe does not fail. The law does not fail. If you speak a word with true conviction, and then you do not see the result, it is not because the law stopped working. It is because somewhere in your consciousness, you contradicted that word. You affirmed and then you denied. You commanded and then you doubted. You planted a seed and then you dug it up to see if it was growing. This is why I am so insistent about the words you speak after tonight. The midnight command is powerful, but if you speak it with full faith at midnight and then spend the first week of the new year complaining, worrying, and speaking lack, you have canceled your own order. It is like calling a restaurant and placing a beautiful meal order and then calling back every 5 minutes to cancel it and order something different. Eventually, nothing gets delivered because the universe does not know what you truly want. Your word must be consistent. Your faith must be steady. You must guard that seed you plant tonight, like your life depends on it, because it does. I want to take you back with me to a moment in my own life when I learned this lesson in a way I could never forget. It was many years ago, and I was facing what appeared to be an impossible situation. I needed a large sum of money within a very short time frame, and there was absolutely no visible means for it to come. Every logical path was blocked. Every door seemed closed. I could feel panic rising in my chest. My mind was racing, calculating, trying to figure out how to make it happen through human effort alone. And then I stopped. I remembered my own teaching. I remembered that the universe has 1,000 ways to bring me my good that I know nothing about. I did not need to see the path. I only needed to speak the word and trust the law. So I sat down, I became very still, and I spoke out loud with absolute conviction. The money I need is here now. It comes to me easily and perfectly through divine channels. I give thanks that it is done. And then, this is the crucial part, I let it go. I did not spend the next hours worrying about how it would come. I did not make anxious phone calls. I did not try to manipulate circumstances. I simply went about my day in faith, knowing that my word had set something in motion in the invisible realm. 3 days later, completely out of nowhere, I received a check for the exact amount I needed from a source I had not even thought of. Not approximately the amount. The exact amount. That experience became an anchor for my faith. It proved to me beyond doubt that the law works when you work it correctly. But here is what I also learned. Before that demonstration came, I had to stop contradicting myself. I had to stop saying things like, I do not know how this will work out, or, this seems impossible. Every time I caught myself starting to speak doubt, I would stop mid-sentence and replace it with my affirmation. I literally retrained my mouth. And you are going to have to do the same thing. This is not a one-time event. This midnight command is a beginning, a powerful seed, but you must nurture that seed with consistent, faithful words in the days and weeks that follow. Let me tell you about another person I worked with, a young man who came to me desperate for a job. He had been unemployed for months. He had sent out hundreds of applications. He had gone on countless interviews. Nothing was working. He was bitter, angry, convinced the world was against him, and every single day he spoke that bitterness. It is not fair. Nobody will give me a chance. I am never going to find anything. The economy is terrible. I am too old, too young, too experienced, not experienced enough. He had an excuse for every closed door, and each excuse was a declaration that kept him locked out. I told him what I am telling you. Stop cursing yourself. Stop explaining why you cannot have what you want. Start declaring that your perfect opportunity exists right now and is making its way to you. He resisted at first. He thought I was being naive, that I did not understand how hard the job market was, but he was desperate enough to try. Every morning, he started speaking. My perfect job comes to me now. I am guided to the right place at the right time. The universe is arranging everything for my highest good. For the first week, nothing changed out war. But I began to notice something extraordinary happening within me. My thoughts were lighter. My chest felt less constricted. Where there had been a constant churning of anxiety, there was now a strange, unfamiliar spaciousness. This is what so many people misunderstand about affirmations. They expect fireworks. They expect their bank account to triple overnight, or their dream partner to knock on the door by Tuesday. But the real magic begins in the invisible realm, in consciousness itself. You are first rearranging the furniture of your mind, and only then does the outer world reflect that new arrangement. By the second week, I noticed I was walking differently. I kid you not, my very gait had changed. I held my head higher. I made eye contact with strangers. It was as though the repeated declaration that I was divinely guided had actually convinced some deep, ancient part of me that it was true. And here's the key. Your subconscious mind does not argue with you. It simply accepts what you repeatedly impress upon it and begins to outpicture it in your experience. Then came the evidence in the physical world. I received an unexpected check in the mail, not a fortune, but enough to cover a bill I'd been dreading. A friend called with an opportunity I hadn't anticipated. Doors that had seemed locked suddenly swung open with barely a touch. None of these things were earth-shattering on their own, but together they formed an unmistakable pattern. The universe was responding. This is what I mean when I say you must become a detective of divine synchronicity. Start paying attention. The woman who sits next to you on the bus and mentions exactly the book you needed to read. The song on the radio, whose lyrics answer the question you asked in prayer that morning. The sudden intuition to take a different route home, only to discover you've avoided a traffic jam, or perhaps you've been positioned for a meaningful encounter. Every single one of these instances is the universe saying, I hear you, I'm working with you, keep going. And here's what most people miss. They think signs have to be dramatic. They expect a burning bush, a thunderbolt, a message written across the sky. But the universe is far more intimate than that. It whispers. It nudges. It places the right book in your hands at exactly the moment you need those specific words. It sends you a stranger who says something that echoes what you've been feeling but couldn't articulate. I've learned to pay attention to what I call the small synchronicities. The song that plays just when you needed to hear those exact lyrics. The person who cancels, freeing up your schedule for something better to appear. The unexpected compliment that arrives precisely when doubt was creeping in. These aren't accidents. They're the universe's way of keeping you encouraged on the path. You see, when you're aligned with your word, with your vision, with your faith, the entire universe becomes your partner. It rearranges circumstances. It moves people and situations. It creates what we might call coincidences, but there's nothing coincidental about them at all. I remember speaking my word about the right living situation, and within days, not weeks, not months, but days, someone mentioned a place that met every single requirement I'd held in my mind. Same neighborhood I'd visualized, same light streaming through the windows I'd imagined, even the same feeling I'd been carrying in my heart. When I walked in, I didn't think, this will work. I thought, of course, this is already mine. That's the recognition I'm talking about. When your demonstration arrives, there's a feeling of reunion, not surprise. It's like meeting someone you've known forever, but are seeing for the first time. Your whole being says yes before your mind catches up. And this is crucial. You must be willing to receive. I've watched people speak their word, do the inner work, and then when their good tries to come to them, they block it. They say it's too good to be true. They look for the catch. They wonder if they deserve it. And in that wondering, they push away the very thing they asked for. Reception is an art. It requires you to stay open, expectant, ready to say yes when yes appears. It means you cannot be dismissive of small signs. A friend calls unexpectedly. A book falls open to a certain page. A stranger says something that echoes your prayer. These are not coincidences. These are answered prayers in disguise. I had a student who prayed for financial freedom. She was drowning in debt, working 2 jobs, exhausted beyond measure. She asked. She believed. She let go. And then one day, her neighbor knocked on her door and mentioned a position opening up at her company, a position that paid twice what my student was making. My student almost said no. She almost dismissed it because it didn't look dramatic enough. She expected a lottery win, an inheritance, a miracle that announced itself with trumpets. But this was her miracle. Quiet, practical, delivered by a neighbor in sweatpants. She took the job. Within a year, her debt was gone. You see, the universe doesn't always send lightning bolts. Sometimes it sends neighbors in sweatpants. And if you are too proud, too rigid, too focused on how you think the answer should look, you will miss it entirely. Reception also requires humility. You must be willing to receive from unexpected sources. Maybe you prayed for love, and it doesn't come from the person you had in mind. Maybe you prayed for healing, and it comes through a chance meeting, not a doctor. Maybe you prayed for guidance, and it arrives in a dream, a song, a billboard you pass on the highway. Stay open. Stay flexible. The universe is far more creative than your limited imagination. And here's the part that trips people up most. You must receive without guilt. So many of us have been trained to feel unworthy of good. We ask, and when it comes, we shrink back. We say, "Oh, I don't deserve this." We apologize for our blessings. We downplay our victories. This is poison. When you refuse to receive fully, you block the flow. You tell the universe, "I am not ready. I am not worthy. Do not give me more." And so it stops. Not because the universe is punishing you, but because you have closed the door. You must receive with open hands and a grateful heart. You must say, "Yes, thank you. I accept this gift with joy." No apologies, no second guessing, no guilt. Just receive it. You know, I've watched people do the most extraordinary things to avoid receiving. A woman once told me her husband surprised her with a new car, a beautiful automobile she'd admired for months. And do you know what she did? She cried. Not tears of joy, mind you. Tears of panic. "We can't afford this," she kept saying. "What will people think? It's too much." She spent 3 days trying to convince him to return it. The universe had moved heaven and earth to bring her this gift through her husband, yes, but the universe nonetheless, and she was standing there with her hands up, pushing it away. This is what we do. This is the madness of it. We pray, we affirm, we visualize, we do all the spiritual work, and then when the answer arrives, we say, "Oh no, not like this. Not now. Not for me." Let me tell you what happened to that woman. Her husband, bless him, refused to return the car. He said, "Darling, this is already yours. It has your name on it. You can drive it or let it sit in the garage, but it's not going back." And slowly, she began to accept it. She started driving it. And you know what else started to happen? Her business picked up. New clients appeared. Money flowed more easily. Why? Because she had finally opened the door of receiving. And when you open that door, even a crack, the universe comes flooding through. The act of receiving is a spiritual practice. It's not passive. It's not lazy. It requires courage, tremendous courage to stand in your worth and say, "Yes, this is mine. I accept this." Every time you receive graciously, you're doing several things at once. You're honoring the giver, you're honoring the universe's abundance, and most importantly, you're honoring yourself. You're saying, "I am worthy of good. I am worthy of ease. I am worthy of gifts, blessings, and beautiful surprises." And here's the mystical part. Every time you receive, you expand your capacity to receive more. Think of yourself as a vessel. If you're constantly refusing what's poured into you, you stay small, tight, closed. But each time you open and allow something in, your capacity grows. You stretch, you expand, you become a larger container for good. And here's the beautiful thing about this expansion. It doesn't happen through struggle. It happens through acceptance. You see, most people think they need to fight their way to a larger life. They think they need to force doors open, manipulate circumstances, convince people, scramble and scheme. But that's the old way. That's the way of limitation consciousness. The new way, the spiritual way, is to accept what is already yours. When you accept prosperity as your divine right, you don't need to chase it. You simply open your arms and receive it. When you accept love as your spiritual inheritance, you don't need to beg for it. You recognize it flowing toward you from all directions. I knew a woman who spent years trying to make her business succeed through sheer force of will. She worked 18-hour days. She networked until she was exhausted. She sacrificed her health, her relationships, her peace of mind. And still, the business struggled. Then one day, she surrendered. Not in defeat, in acceptance. She said, "God, if this business is part of my divine plan, show me the way. If not, show me what is." She released her death grip on one particular outcome and opened herself to divine guidance. Within 3 months, everything shifted. The right opportunities appeared. The right people showed up. The money flowed in ways she never could have orchestrated herself. This is what I mean by acceptance. It's not passive. It's the most active thing you can do spiritually. You're actively aligning yourself with divine order. You're actively removing your personal will from the driver's seat and allowing infinite intelligence to guide. And when you do this, you stop making mistakes. Or rather, what looks like mistakes from the human perspective turns out to be perfect stepping stones from the divine perspective. You take the wrong train, and you meet someone who gives you exactly the information you needed. You lose a job, and it frees you to discover your true calling. You miss an opportunity, and a better one appears that you never would have seen if you'd been locked into the first one. This is divine order in action. This is the universe rearranging itself on your behalf. But you must let it. You must stop micromanaging every detail of your life and trust the bigger picture. Trust doesn't mean passivity. It doesn't mean sitting on your couch eating chips waiting for a miracle to knock on your door. Trust means taking inspired action while releasing attachment to the outcome. It means doing your part, then stepping back and letting the universe do its part. I've watched people sabotage the most beautiful opportunities because they couldn't trust the timing. A woman once told me she met the perfect man, but he wasn't ready for a relationship when she wanted one. Instead of trusting the timing, she pushed, demanded, and ultimately drove him away. 6 months later, he was ready, but with someone else, someone who trusted the process. You see, the universe has a sense of timing that is far more sophisticated than your anxious mind could ever calculate. It knows when all the pieces need to be in place. It knows when you're actually ready, not just when you think you're ready. Sometimes what looks like a delay is actually a divine setup. The job you didn't get saved you from a company that would have laid you off 3 months later. The relationship that ended made room for the love of your life, who was just around the corner. The apartment that fell through protected you from a nightmare landlord. But you only see this in retrospect. In the moment, all you see is disappointment. This is why trust is so critical. You must trust even when you can't see the full picture, especially when you can't see the full picture. Your rational mind will never understand divine timing. It operates on a completely different frequency. Your mind wants everything now, everything linear, everything predictable. But the universe works in spirals, in circles, in patterns that only make sense when you zoom out far enough to see the whole design. I'm going to tell you something that might sound crazy. Every single delay in your life has been protecting you from something or preparing you for something. Every single one. There are no random setbacks in a divinely orchestrated universe. Every delay is actually divine timing working on your behalf. I've watched this truth play out in ways that would astound you. A woman once came to me desperate because a business deal had fallen through. She'd lost sleep, convinced the universe had abandoned her. 3 months later, she discovered that the partner she'd almost joined had been systematically defrauding investors. The failure had saved her entire financial future. What she called disaster, the universe called protection. This is where your vision must expand beyond what your physical eyes can see. You're looking at the closed door. The universe is already unlocking 3 windows on the floor above. You're mourning the missed train. Divine intelligence knew there was a meeting on the next one that would change everything. The gap between what you wanted and what you received isn't punishment, it's preparation. Here's what I need you to understand in your bones. Resistance to what is creates suffering. Acceptance of what is creates peace. But here's the deeper truth. Asterisk expectation of what's coming creates miracles. Asterisk. When you stand in the present moment and declare, something better is on its way, you align yourself with the forward movement of infinite supply. You're not resigned. You're not passive. You're positioned, like a surfer who sees the big wave forming far out at sea and paddles to exactly the right spot to catch it. The universe never subtracts without planning to multiply. Think of a farmer who pulls up healthy plants. It seems destructive until you realize he's making room for a harvest that will feed thousands instead of dozens. What's being removed from your life right now? Can you trust that space is being created for something your current circumstances couldn't accommodate? I once knew a singer who lost her voice completely for 6 months. She was devastated. During that silence, she learned to write music. When her voice returned, she wasn't just a performer anymore, she was a creator. The universe hadn't taken her gift, it had expanded it. But first, she had to surrender to the mystery of the closed door. Your job isn't to understand the path. Your job is to walk it with certainty that it leads somewhere magnificent. She didn't white-knuckle her way through uncertainty. She didn't create backup plans or hedge her spiritual bets. She simply held the vision of her highest good and refused to let appearances dictate her inner state. This is the part where most people stumble. We say we trust the universe, but then we spend every waking moment trying to control how things unfold. We pray for guidance, then ignore the intuitive nudge because it doesn't make logical sense. We affirm abundance, then panic when the bank account dips. Real faith isn't passive waiting, it's active alignment. It's continuing to speak your word even when nothing seems to be moving. It's maintaining your frequency even when external circumstances are screaming a different story. I've watched people lose their demonstrations at the 11th hour, not because the universe failed them, but because they changed their inner channel right before the manifestation was about to arrive. They got scared, they got impatient, they started speaking words of lack and limitation again. The demonstration was on its way, but they withdrew their acceptance of it through doubt and fear. It's like planting a seed, nurturing it until it's about to break through the soil, then digging it up because you can't see the evidence fast enough. Your word is working even when you can't see it working. The invisible substance is arranging itself according to your command. But you must hold steady. You must maintain your inner conviction regardless of outer appearances. There's a spiritual law that says the darkest hour is just before dawn. When everything seems to be falling apart, you're often at the threshold of your breakthrough. This is when your faith is tested most intensely. The woman with the apartment received 3 rejection letters in the days after she spoke her word. Each one could have been interpreted as evidence that her demonstration wasn't coming. Instead, she said, "These are not my apartments. Mine is being prepared for me now." She didn't fight the rejections. She didn't take them personally. She simply maintained her inner knowing that what was hers was already secured in the spiritual realm and must manifest in the physical. Within 3 weeks, a publisher she'd never contacted reached out to her. Someone had passed along her manuscript. They loved it. They wanted it. The opportunity came through what looked like chance, but she knew it was divine order responding to her unwavering inner conviction. This is the mystery most people miss. You don't need to force every door open. You don't need to exhaust yourself pushing against resistance. Your work is to claim it inwardly, to feel it as already yours, and then to stay alert and responsive when the universe rearranges circumstances to deliver it. Think about a child who asks their parent for something and then goes off to play, completely confident it will appear. They don't sit by the door anxiously. They don't check every 5 minutes. They asked, they believed, and they moved on with joy in their hearts. That's the consciousness that allows miracles. But here's what trips people up. They confuse detachment with indifference. They think not caring means the same thing as not worrying. These are entirely different states. Indifference says, "I don't really want it anyway." Detachment says, "I know it's mine, so I don't need to grip it with anxiety." Do you feel the difference? One is giving up. The other is giving over, surrendering the how and when, while maintaining absolute certainty about the what. I worked with a man who wanted to sell his business. He'd been trying for 2 years with no success. Every potential buyer either backed out at the last moment or offered insultingly low amounts. He was drowning in frustration, checking his email obsessively, calling his broker twice a day. When we spoke, I said to him, "Your desperation is repelling the right buyer. You're broadcasting need. And need attracts more, need not fulfillment. You must release this business with love and declare that the perfect buyer is already on their way." He looked at me like I'd suggested he jump off a bridge. "Release it? I need to sell it. My retirement depends on this." "That's precisely why you must release it," I told him. Your fear is creating a vibration that pushes away what you want. Claim the sale inwardly. Give thanks for the perfect buyer. Then go about your life as though it's already handled. Reluctantly, he tried it. Within 3 days, someone walked into his shop and made an offer. Not for what he'd originally wanted, but for a fair price. He accepted. The moment he stopped grasping, the channel opened. This is true for everything you seek. Your anxious grip is what blocks the flow. Your desperation sends out waves that repel the very thing you desire. But when you stand in quiet certainty, When you claim your good without clinging to it, the universe rearranges itself to meet you. Now, I must speak to something that troubles many of you. You say, but I've been affirming for weeks, for months even. Where are my results? Listen carefully. Your words are not magic spells, they're seeds. And seeds require something from you before they can grow. They require that you stop digging them up to check if they're sprouting. Every time you panic, every time you check your bank balance with fear, every time you say, it's not working, you yank that seed right out of the soil. You must plant it once, water it with faith, and then go about your life with confidence. I knew a woman who wanted marriage desperately. She affirmed. She visualized. She did everything right, or so she thought. But underneath every affirmation was a trembling fear. What if I end up alone? That fear was the real prayer. That fear was what she was truly claiming. Her words said one thing, but her consciousness held another. I said to her, you must let it go. Not abandon your desire, but release your stranglehold on it. Treat it like a bird you've been clutching too tightly. Open your hand. If it's yours, it will return to you in perfect timing. She resisted at first. Letting go felt like giving up. But finally, she understood. She began to live as though she were already whole, already complete. She stopped scanning every room for potential husbands. She stopped treating every date like an audition for her future. Within 2 months, she met someone. But more importantly, she'd already found peace. The relationship was simply the cherry on top of a consciousness that had healed itself. This is the great secret they don't tell you. The demonstration often arrives after you no longer need it to feel complete. Now this brings us to what I call the practice of spiritual amnesia, the art of deliberately forgetting your problem. Florence spoke of this constantly, though she never called it by that name. She'd tell her students to treat their demonstrations as already done, to the point of actually forgetting they'd ever asked for them. Think about how radical that is. We're so trained to monitor our desires like security guards, checking every 5 minutes to see if they've arrived yet. We refresh our bank accounts obsessively. We check our phones compulsively. We scan every conversation for signs that love is coming. This vigilance feels responsible, but it's actually the very thing blocking our good. I worked with a man who'd been trying to sell his business for 2 years. 2 years of stress, of negotiations falling through, of almost deals that dissolved at the last minute. He was exhausted from the mental management of it all. When he came to me, I gave him an assignment that seemed ridiculous. I told him to spend 1 week acting as if the sale had already happened perfectly, and to literally forget he was trying to sell a business. He thought I'd lost my mind, but he was desperate enough to try. For 7 days, he stopped checking in with brokers. He stopped rehearsing sales pitches in his head. He started planning what he'd do with his newfound freedom instead. He researched travel destinations. He sketched out ideas for a creative project he'd always wanted to pursue. He lived in the reality of the wish fulfilled so completely that he genuinely forgot to worry about the sale. On day 8, he received a call from a buyer he'd met months earlier, someone who'd shown mild interest and then disappeared. That buyer had just sold his own company and wanted to close a deal within 2 weeks. The offer was better than anything he'd previously received. Now, you might say, that's just coincidence. That's just timing. But here's what I know. There is no such thing as coincidence in the spiritual realm. Every seeming accident is the divine plan unfolding. When you change your inner conviction, the outer circumstances must rearrange themselves to match. It's law. It's as reliable as the law of gravity. This man didn't chase that buyer. He didn't manipulate or force. He simply held the vision, spoke the word, and remained open to how it would manifest. And the universe, in its infinite intelligence, brought the right person at the right moment with the right resources. That's the difference between working with spiritual law and working against it. When you're in resistance, you're pushing water uphill. When you're in alignment, the river carries you exactly where you need to go. Let me share another principle that changed everything for me: the law of substitution. You cannot get rid of a negative thought by fighting it. You can only replace it with its opposite. If you're afraid, you don't battle the fear, you substitute the thought of perfect faith. If you're worried about lack, you don't argue with the worry, you replace it with the vision of abundance already present. I learned this the hard way. For years, I tried to push away negative thoughts, to wrestle them into submission. And what happened? They grew stronger. Whatever you resist persists. But the moment I began substituting immediately, the instant a fearful thought appeared, everything shifted. Fear cannot exist in the same space as faith. They're opposite vibrations. One must yield to the other. Think of your mind as a garden. You can spend all day pulling weeds, exhausting yourself in the effort, and they'll grow back tomorrow. Or you can plant so many flowers that there's no room for weeds to take root. That's substitution. You crowd out the negative with so much positive that it has nowhere to land. I've watched people transform their entire emotional landscape this way. One woman I worked with used to spiral into anxiety every evening. She'd sit alone and catalog every worry, every fear, every potential disaster waiting around the corner. I asked her to try something different. Every time a fearful thought appeared, she was to immediately speak aloud an affirmation of safety and provision, not as a rejection of the fear, but as a replacement. Within 3 weeks, her evenings became peaceful. The worries still knocked occasionally, but they found no vacancy. Her mind was occupied with something else. This is not pretending. This is not toxic positivity. This is strategic spiritual warfare. You are not denying reality. You are choosing which reality you will energize and bring forth. Because here's what most people don't understand. Your current reality is also a choice. It's the result of mental patterns you've been running on autopilot, perhaps for years. The apartment was already furnished. You just moved in and accepted the decor. Substitution is renovating. It's saying, I see what's here, and I'm replacing it with what I want instead. Let me give you a powerful practice. For the next 7 days, carry a small object in your pocket, a stone, a coin, anything tactile. Every time you touch it, pause and substitute one negative thought with its opposite, just one. Don't overwhelm yourself. If you catch yourself thinking, I'm always behind, replace it immediately with, I am exactly where I need to be, and everything flows perfectly. If you think, nobody values my work, replace it. My unique contributions are seen and appreciated. What you'll discover is remarkable. The negative thoughts don't have the grip you thought they did. They're not welded to your consciousness. They're just habits. And habits can be replaced. By the end of 7 days, you'll notice something shifting. The new thoughts begin to arrive on their own. They volunteer themselves. Your mind starts reaching for the light instead of the shadow. Not because you're forcing it, but because you've shown it there's a better option available. This is how you change your mental atmosphere. Not through warfare, but through replacement. Not through resistance, but through redirection. You become a gardener of consciousness. And every day you choose what grows. And here's what most people never realize. Every moment of noticing is a moment of choosing. You see the anxious thought arise, and in that microsecond of awareness, you're already free. Not free from the thought, free to choose your response to it. This is the difference between reaction and creation. Reaction is automatic, unconscious, inherited. Creation is deliberate, conscious, chosen. And you are being called to become a creator, not just in the big moments,